Welcome to Democracy Truth, a podcast about elections in Arizona. Today, our topic is Empower Your Voice, the importance of primary voting in Arizona. I'm your host, Suzanne, and today we're going to explore the significance of primary elections with our guest, Emra.
Hi, Suzanne. Thanks for having me. I have to admit, I've always been a bit skeptical about the importance of voting in primaries. It kind of feels like second string voting with potentially very little impact. Can you help me understand why it matters?
Absolutely, Emra. Let's start by saying that primary voting is definitely not second string voting. Far from it.
Really? How?
Well, primary elections are essentially where political parties choose their candidates for the general election, and not just presidential candidates, all candidates on the ballot, from city councils and mayors, county seats like county recorder, superintendent of public instruction, county attorney, to state senators and congressional representatives and senators.
But why should I care about the primary? The candidates are pretty much already decided anyway.
Funny you should think that. Up until the second half of the 20th century, most candidates were decided by party bosses in closed door meetings. Now, with primary elections, voters have a say in who represents their party on the ballot. It's the first step in the democratic process. In fact, primary elections often determine the outcome of the general election.
How does that happen?
There are a couple of elements at play here. First, when a large number of voters representing a wide spectrum of the electorate participate in primaries, candidates that end up on the ballot for the general election tend to be more moderate and more fully representative of the community as a whole.
I'm not sure I'm following. Will you explain that further?
Sure. Primary elections tend to have lower voter turnout compared to general elections. In 2020, for example, just over 36%, or slightly more than a third, of registered voters in Arizona participated in the primary.
I guess a lot of people think of the primaries as second string voting.
Unfortunately, I think you're right. So this means that a fraction of voters is basically telling you which candidates you get to vote for.
Okay, I get that. But just because I vote in the primary doesn't mean my candidate will make it to the general election.
Oh, absolutely true. However, it's worth noting that most of the state legislature seats are decided in primary elections, and the legislature has quite a bit to say about what happens in Arizona. Also, your question speaks to my second point. If a candidate gets significant support during the run for the primary, support that's verified by voter turnout and primary results, their voice in the party gets louder.
What? Even if they lose in the primary?
That's right. Because the candidates did really well in the primary, they have a bigger say in deciding the party's policy positions going forward. Ideally, the candidates that do win the primary are more likely to devote more attention and resources to those demographics and issues that ran well in the primary. Even if a candidate running on those issues and supported by voters in those demographic groups did not prevail. This is how high voter turnout in the primaries allows for a more inclusive and equitable representation of voters' voices in general elections.
I see. So my vote in the primary actually carries more weight than I realized.
Exactly. With primary elections also shaping party policies, candidate platforms, and policy agendas, your vote in the primary can influence the direction of our state and our nation.
Wow, I never thought about it that way. But what about independent voters like myself? Can we participate in primary elections?
Absolutely. In Arizona, independent voters can request a party ballot from their county recorder's office to participate in either the Democratic or Republican primary. It's a simple process that allows independent voices to be heard in the primary election.
It's easy to do?
Yes, online or over the phone. For even more information about voting in primary elections, check out vote411.org. That's a trusted site for voter and candidate information by state. Not only will you find more information about primary elections and voting as an independent, but there is information about election dates and locations, voter registration, and much more. Also, check out our other podcast episode, Casting a Vote My Way.
That's good to know, Suzanne. Thanks for letting me know about that additional resource, and thanks for clearing up many of my questions about the importance of voting in primary elections. I definitely feel more informed and motivated to participate in primary voting now. It's certainly not second string.
No, it is not. It's been my pleasure, Emra. Tell your friends to participate in the primaries too. Remember, every vote counts, especially in primary elections. This year's primary election in Arizona is Tuesday, July 30th. Let's make democracy work for all Arizonans. Thank you for joining us on Empower Your Voice. Be sure to spread the word about the importance of primary voting, and together, let's make our voices heard. This podcast has been brought to you by the League of Women Voters of Arizona. We are a nonpartisan, grassroots civic organization that encourages informed and active participation in government. We work to increase understanding of major public policy issues and influence public policy through education and advocacy. With over 100 years of experience, the League is one of America's oldest and most trusted civic nonprofit organizations. Thank you again for joining us today.